All right, in this installment of Liberty Music, excited to talk about the Lilacs Endure, the first new release by Chicago power pop quartet The Lilacs in more than 25 years, and great to get some insights from Ken Kurson. How's it going there, Ken?
Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Oh no, it's great to talk to you. I'm kind of just curious though, like why now for a return to form with the Lilacs? Like 25 years, obviously a notable sort of period of time. Was there anything that inspired that sort of move, like after such a long period of being dormant?
There was an unfortunate fact. In 2016, I got divorced, and I'd focused my whole life on my career and getting ahead and all that. That probably contributed to that sad event. But one of the things that I learned in first marriage therapy and then just regular therapy was start saying yes to stuff you've been saying no to, and start saying no to stuff you've been saying yes to. And I think that's good advice for anybody who kind of hits a midlife, life check. So, all of a sudden, I'd gotten offers over the years. I'll put the band back together because we had some notoriety, especially in Chicago, our hometown. But I'd always said no. I'm focused on my career. And all of a sudden, I got this call from Joe Shanahan, who runs the Cabaret Metro in Chicago, which is the big, that's the place to play. And I said, you know what, let's do it. So I called the guys. Everyone was into it, and so that was early 17. And ever since then, we've been doing 3-4 gigs a year. We went to England just this past May, and we had some songs, a couple of new songs and a couple of songs from the day that had never made it to record, and they just sounded great. So why not put them out? Luckily, we got a record deal, and they'll be released on August 16th.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there was that renewed vigor and everything like that, like being away from it for, a certain period of time. And then, you're trying to find more of that sort of work life balance. So it seems like certain things fell into place, albeit with maybe some unfortunate circumstance that underpins that. But I mean, you get a great project from the Lilacs and back to it. So it seems like it worked out.
It's such a strange thing, though, to be 50 years old. In some ways, it's so much better to play music. You could do it without it, like, getting you fired from your minimum wage job, right? Like we can take a vacation like adults. And in other ways, it's way harder. It's just it's harder to stay up till 2 in the morning and rock out. Um, you know, but I think the band sounds as good as it ever has, honestly. And whatever we've lost in terms of not being able to hit the high notes in my case, or maybe do some other things in the other musicians' cases, we've more than made up for it just in being more responsible and mature about how we approach this thing. I've listened to it. I'm really our toughest critic. I've listened to a lot of our live stuff and this sort of most recent go around, and it really holds up.
Yeah, so it sounds like you guys just really didn't miss a beat. Like, was there any early period where there felt like there was some sort of rust, or was it kind of like you were saying, where everything just sort of clicked immediately? Because it seems like with the band, it's not like so much a group of like musicians who are together just for the sake of the band. It seems like there's a real kinship and also friendship among the band members too.
That's a really nice observation, and thanks for doing your homework. Three of us went to high school together. Two of the guys went to college together. So we really have been friends, and we've maintained the friendships even when we weren't playing music together. So that said, there was some rust. I remember our first couple practices getting ready for this gig, and I'm a little bit of a slave driver in terms of the band. I did not want to be a joke. I had just seen. It's funny. I just had seen Styx and Foreigner do a show together that I was covering as in my career. My real job is journalist, and I had gone to see Styx and Foreigner, and this is probably year 45 for Styx and about the same for Foreigner, and Styx was awesome, and Foreigner sucked, and I did not want to be that band that just is like, okay, we'll play because we can. I only wanted to do it if we had, if not something new, at least something more than competent to contribute. So all four of us live in different cities. None of us lives in Chicago anymore. But when we first got back together in Chicago, the first practice, it was like, oh no. But very soon the feelings started to return. By the time we played, we were really good.
And I'm curious, like for you guys earlier on, was there any like early communal spaces, like record stores or venues, just certain things for up and coming musicians in the area?
Oh, tons, tons. Chicago had a very vibrant indie rock scene in the sort of the mid '80s to the mid '90s, which was when we were plowing that field. Wax Trax was a classic record store that launched a lot of bands too. For some reason, I just heard um, the Johnny Cash version of Nine Inch Nails song "Hurt," and it brought back a lot of great sort of industrial music memories from the Wax Track scene. And there were great venues like Lounge Acts that two women who were sort of paragons of the indie scene heroically kept going through all kinds of neighborhood hassles and provided a really warm and nurturing environment to all the bands that were coming up. Before I was in the Lilacs, I was in a band called Green that also achieved some sort of success on an indie level. And we really would not have been able to survive without venues like Phyllis of the Musical Inn that sort of let us play in a low pressure environment and work the kinks out, so that by the time the replacements or Husker Du called with an opening slot, we were ready to not sound like a garage band.
That must have been a killer gig, the replacements and Husker Du.
But I was just reminiscing about I played with Husker Du a few times, and sometimes their individual members would come to our shows when we play up in Minneapolis. But one of the best was at a club called the Riviera in Chicago, right after Flip Your Week came out, which was their major label debut. And they were a band at peak songwriting power, peak popularity, and the intensity of the anger between the members was so thick that it was like it made it an even more exciting show, because they were so good and so sick of each other that it was just an exciting place to be.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious about some of the music of the Lilacs and everything like that because lyrically it seems like, pretty lighthearted in certain ways and obviously like you're pretty steeped in like, politics like with your day-to-day goings on and stuff like that as like a political commentator and the things you do in journalism and everything like that. I'm wondering if like the Lilacs is like a sort of cathartic way to, get beyond some of the oftentimes I guess like divisive, political discourse and stuff like that and just have a sort of outlet like this where you have to worry as much about that kind of stuff and you're kind of unencumbered by maybe some of the stresses that can come from discussing politics and just ideologies in general.
Yeah, you've completely nailed it. It's there's so few things that today bring people together in any way. It seems like literally, like even in Chicago now, baseball is not that way anymore because the Cubs owner has taken a prominent position in the Republican Party. So Cubs fans who don't like the Republicans now are becoming White Sox fans. So even the most innocuous pursuits have this political tinge to them. And one of the things I always celebrated about music, even though I adore political music like the Clash or Billy Bragg, is that it was a space where if Love Me Do does not have a political component and shouldn't. And the Beatles there were some political overtones to it, and certainly a song like Taxman could be seen as a conservative right-wing ode, but you could enjoy this music without declaring your allegiances. So it's not just me. All of the members of the Lilacs have I'm sort of the dumb one in the group. I've enjoyed a ton of success in my career, but I'm the only one who didn't finish college and doesn't have a bunch of degrees. All the other guys are doing these incredibly intense, impressive jobs. But we never. I mean, to this day, these have been my close friends for 30 plus years. We really have not had a substantive political conversation. It didn't come up when we'd be traveling, to Winnipeg for 20 hours in the van, and it didn't come up, when we'd be hanging out in a Chicago bar. It just wasn't what we're about. It's not about it's not what we're about today.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense. I mean, considering, like I said, what you do as a career, I figured you obviously want to compartmentalize those certain things because you can get both of those out in, different mediums and all that.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. Got to have a life apart from a day-to-day kickboxing that anyone vaguely connected to American politics endures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of just curious about like the recording process here and everything like that. I'm noticing that Richard Lloyd of, television fame and a well-regarded indie rock legend came to produce this record. How did that all come about? And also an extension of that legendary Studio 19 was used as the recording space. How did that come about as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question because I'm dying to give Richard some credit. So I've been a huge television, and in fact, I've lived for the last 10 years on 4th Street in the East Village, which, for those who are not schooled in Manhattan history, is right where CBGB's and Max's Kansas City and all these sort of, Fillmore West and Fillmore East and all these famous venues were. And including some that I played at, like CBGB's. So, so I've been a huge fan of the entire sort of 1977 Lower East Side movement, and I think the Ramones and television and Blondie, the New York Dolls. These are some of the most important cultural moments that the entire history of the United States has ever produced. So. When I sort of heard through a friend of a friend that Richard Lloyd had liked our band way back when, I have no idea how he heard of it other than a guy we are all fans of called Rick Mink is the drummer for Matthew Sweet. And Richard Lloyd was the guitar player of Matthew Sweet after his work with television. So maybe that was a connection. I really don't know. But I sort of got in touch with Richard Lloyd and said, hey, I heard long ago you're a Lilacs fan. What are you doing? Are you still involved in music? And so he told me to get his new record, The Countdown, and check it out. And if I liked what I heard, maybe we could do something together. So I bought the record. It's phenomenal. I urge your listeners to give it a shot because Richard's not a great singer, but he's this incredibly soulful singer, and his guitar playing just remains. He has the oddest combination of sort of this mathematical, analytic approach to the instrument, but plays with real heart, and it's exciting to hear. He remains just this incredibly innovative songwriter and musician. So I went and saw him in upstate New York at this crazy place that's on the river. It was like a sit-down acoustic, or not acoustic, but sit-down solo thing. I introduced myself. I said I had done what he said. I got the record. I loved it. What can we do together? He said, why don't you come to Nashville and record a couple songs? I'll produce them. I was like, what? It's like when Kurt Vonnegut writes Thornton Mellon's term paper in back to school. It's just like an amazing offer. So, I once again, I called the guys, and we used a slightly different lineup, but still, all guys with official Lilacs history. A drummer who played with us, who'd been in the band and played with us, and a bass player who had never really officially been a Lilac, but we all knew for a long time from touring with him. And it just went amazing. As for how Scotty's studio came about, it's a place Richard's comfortable in, and so he lives in Tennessee. We don't. So we're going to do what he told us. And the session was really great. He could be a cranky guy. He had me do all these vocal exercises before the session, and he had like really strong opinions about how to do them, and but all of it worked, and he appreciated that we did follow his advice, and the session couldn't have been easier or more fun.
Yeah, you've definitely worked with some prolific producers over the years, like Material Issue frontman Jim Ellison for the debut EP, The Lilacs Love You. And to that point, I'm kind of curious, is there like a linear sort of pattern with the records in as far as like the previous record informs the next one to a degree, or is each record sort of a snapshot in time and you compartmentalize each album as an altogether different experience?
I'm so glad you asked about Jim because I want to take a minute to give him some proper respect. Jim committed suicide in 1996, so that's already 23 years ago. And he was not only the guy who named our band, not only the guy who produced our first record and actually played on it, but he was also one of my closest friends. So this guy, wrote hit song after hit song, including "Valerie Loves Me" and What Girls Want, and a bunch more. But what's less known is what a fun and generous guy he was. Um, and so his interaction with the Lilacs is a perfect illustration of that. You know, the guy just couldn't have been more willing to bend over backwards to help us, even as his own career was skyrocketing. It's like the opposite of someone who leaves all his friends behind. As soon as he started getting success, he was like, "Oh, who from the old neighborhood could I help, and how can I help them more?" So he'd give us, opening slots all the time. A funny anecdote about that very first record, which he produced, is that back in the old days when you recorded on actual tape, the 2-inch tape that you'd use was really expensive. And by really expensive, I mean probably $200 for a couple songs worth. But that seemed like totally out of our reach then. So he's like, "Well, I'll take these." I'm resisting using his voice because he has this hilarious Chicago accent and a very idiosyncratic voice. But he said, well, let's just record over these old Material Issue demos. I'm sure nobody else will ever want to hear those. So our first record, The Lilacs Love You, erased some, unheard gems from the world's knowledge of Material Issue. I feel bad about that. But he was a great producer for that first record. But as you observe, we kind of grew as a band. Our next producer was Brad Wood, who we would go in the night, and then a super talented, super tall young woman would come in the day, and we'd be like, "Oh, hey, Liz Fair," and she'd be like, "Oh, hey, Lilacs." So it was a really great scene to be around Chicago at that time when things were breaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Working with different producers and trying out different looks, but also seems like you guys try out different things in terms of like songwriting. It seems like multiple members contribute songs to the Lilacs. So I'm kind of curious, does the methodology for crafting songs differ from song to song with the Lilacs, or is there some semblance of like a uniform means of building songs?
There's two songwriters, David Levinsky and myself, and we have only collaborated on a song one time, which is and even that wasn't a true collaboration. It was more like I had a song and he had a song, and both weren't quite finished, and we took the best elements of both and smashed them together. We haven't sat down and written songs together, which is strange because I used to do that with, for example, Jim Ellison quite regularly. But just recently, Dave came to me with an idea for rewriting one of my old songs, and he's going to write a new bridge to it. So although we haven't done much collaboration in the past, probably because our songs are very personal and they're always about some searing breakup that one of us has gone through or whatever. I think in the future, to the degree there is future Lilacs music, we will do that more in the future because I think we're less ego driven and more collaborative as human beings.
Yeah, and I find that to be kind of interesting wording there. So I'm kind of curious, like, is the Lilacs at a point now where you guys will just, sort of play while you can? Because all of you, seem to have like respective, jobs and like various endeavors on your plate and stuff like that. Like, is there going to be any kind of like formal touring cycle in support of the record or anything of that nature?
We've got a few gigs booked, and oddly enough, we get offers a lot. It's strange. I mean, here after not doing anything for 20 years, we're sitting on a bunch of offers to play, but just the logistics of getting the band together are daunting. So I hope there will be, at least like a 1 or 2 week tour that takes us to wherever we happen to have little islands or patches of fans. But we can't really let that drive us now. It's like we all have kids. We're all married. I know that's like the lamest un-rock and roll thing in the world to say, and I don't want to, pretend I'm Steven Tyler or something. And the fact is, it's like I got to pay the bills, and so we can only do this to the degree it's fun and compatible with our real life. But that said, I am stunned by the opportunities that have been out there for us. Like I said, we went to England. We did 3 shows in Liverpool. We did Milwaukee and Chicago, and we could have easily put together a 10-day Midwestern tour. Because I think there's enough people who remember us and would come out just for the novelty of seeing a band they remember from the '90s, and maybe the novelty of some of the some of the notoriety I've had in my real life. Maybe they'd want to do that too. So who knows?
Yeah, I think it kind of lends itself to what you were talking about before, where there's just that, I guess, like renewed vigor and sense of like enjoying it, and it doesn't seem like as much of like an obligation in the sense of like you have to hit all these certain marks, and it's like this day to day kind of thing. It's like you guys can just get out there and play whenever you want to, pretty much, and there's that, I guess, autonomy to kind of dictate that, and yeah, I think that's a great place to be.
Yeah, it really is. I feel fortunate, and we've become sort of associated with this. There's a festival called the International Pop Overthrow that plays major cities around the world, like from Los Angeles to San Francisco to Chicago, New York, Sweden, like Stockholm, Liverpool, London, and we've become highly associated with that. So that's been a great opportunity. And it's all about power pop, which is basically the genre we're in. And even the name of that festival, the International Pop Overthrow, is taken from Material Issue's first album. So our associations with Material Issue help us out there too. So there's always opportunities to play, and there's always bands that say, "Hey, we're on tour, come open for us." Um, it's just a matter of sorting out the logistics. But I'm telling you, I feel like I'm 50 years old, and I feel like I could easily do 14 shows in 12 nights kind of tour. I feel up to it physically and mentally, and hopefully that becomes possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you provided a lot of great insights to me. You've been great with your time too. I'm curious though, if there's anything you want to add as a parting thought as we're wrapping things up here, man.
I'll just add this that I began by talking about I didn't want to come off like Foreigner, which almost literally had to wheel Mick Jones out to play a half-ass version of Double Vision. But on the other hand, I just bought tickets to see the Rolling Stones for the very first time on August 5th at Giant Stadium, and I think they're going to kick ass. And I don't think it's really about. I've seen enough really shitty shows by guys who are 22 years old, and really excellent musicianship and effort by guys who are 60 something. That and maybe this is a self-serving suspicion, but I really don't think it's about the age. I think it's about the heart, and this band has a heart to keep doing this, at least right now. And when we don't, we'll stop because it's not our life. So I so appreciate you giving me the time to talk to your listeners, and your thoughtful questions are appreciated as well.
Oh, no worries. I mean, it was great to listen to the music and just, delve into the history and everything like that. And to the point of checking out the Rolling Stones, my mom actually saw them recently and, had rave reviews about them. So I'm sure you'll enjoy it too. But I think people will enjoy this record dropping August 16th. Going to be released by Chicago's Pravda label. The Lilacs Endure. It's the first new release by the Lilacs in more than 25 years. And just really appreciate all the time there, man. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day there, Ken.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate this call.